Go ahead and get started. I want to say thank you all for coming and welcome. It's so great to see some familiar faces and some new ones as well. Tonight is our historical education sessions that we have created on how to preserve your property for historical purposes. And this could be your residential or your commercial property. So either way, it's just as important, and going from there. Before we get started, I wanted to also make sure that we said a special thank you, because it hasn't just been staff that's been putting this together. It's also been the Ashland Museum and the Hanover Black Heritage Society. We've all been working pretty fluently since the beginning of the year, just to try to make sure that we had all the topics covered. And I'm sure that we don't have every single topic covered. So if there is something that intrigues your mind tonight, just so that I don't have to, I'll probably announce it anyway in case we have any late people come in. But over here, there's some green cards that you can fill out. Even if we don't cover it this season, it'd be fun to come up with new topics and do some more of these sessions in the future. So feel free to put your concerns, your topics, or suggestions on those green cards, and you can, just fold it and place it back into the bucket, and we will be sure to take that into consideration and look into it for another session. Also, there are some flyers over there. Feel free to take them. If I see that they're missing, or if you know that they're over there and we're missing, we'll certainly make more copies. Mostly just, short flyers so that you can know what the sessions are coming up. After this session in a couple of weeks, we have DHR coming in, a couple of representatives that are going to be, going through and through from basically the beginning of an application to what the expectations are for some of the historical do's and don'ts. And then, in addition, on June 5th, we've been compiling some small videos, and we have a professional videographer that is going to be putting those together, and as well as having 2 or 3 speakers come in with their own personal experiences of their own homes, their own property, and just kind of give you what, their experiences were. So tonight, we have Dr. Andrea Smith coming here tonight. She's with the Department of Historical Preservation at the University of Mary Washington. It's fantastic. I think she drove all the way in the storm to be with us. And she's going to be discussing the economic benefits of taking care of your property, and that's whether it's commercial or, residential. We want to make sure that everybody understands that it's for both. And certainly at the end of the presentation, I'm sure there'll be opportunity. So if you do think of questions or inquiries, that write them down, and we'll make sure that they get addressed tonight. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So yeah, I'm Andi Smith, and I was invited to come here to talk about economic development, even though honestly that's not really my expertise. I primarily work with urban design and transportation, industrial heritage, and gravestones, which, this isn't about gravestones. So, but if you're interested in any of those topics, I definitely encourage you to see what's going on at the University of Mary Washington right up the road. We're not very far. We have a Facebook account, and we have a lot of activities that are open to the public. So if you're ever interested in doing a workshop and you're okay driving a little bit, I would encourage you to come up to Mary Wash and check it out. We also have great restaurants in Fredericksburg, so come hang out. So you might wonder why I was picked to do this. I wonder the same. So let me tell you kind of what my bona fides are. I do have a Ph.D. in all that stuff, but primarily, as I said, I teach historic preservation at Mary Wash, but I'm not an architect. I have a colleague who's an architect, but I'm not. And I have a colleague who does building forensics. Again, that's not me. I don't really crawl anymore. I'm done with those years. But I do work with historic buildings a lot. I'm also a member of the Architectural Review Board in Fredericksburg, so I get to see a lot of the projects that come through, and of course, if they're in the historic district, I see all the projects that come through. I'm a member of the Fredericksburg Main Street Design Committee, so I work a lot with economic development there. And then finally, I'm also the owner of the historic house, which you see here. This is my house. It's in the historic district, and I've owned it since 2016, I think, 2015. And I think when I learned that I was going to do this thing, I thought, you know, what I really want to focus on is less what academics would talk about here and a lot more on the realities of what it's like to own a historic house. So for instance, there's 4 of us in my house, including a teenage girl, and there's 1 bathroom. So that's the joy of owning a historic house. It's super fun. Also, everything breaks. So I told you earlier, I specialize in gravestones. So one of the things that we do every Halloween is that we make gravestones for everything in our house that died. And so in the years that I've owned my house, our HVAC died. Our roof was damaged by our neighbor's tree, which a nice 80-year-old hemlock fell on my kitchen and destroyed my kitchen. We have lost multiple aspects of our house over the years and have had to redo a bunch of things. And just recently, we just repainted it. So any pain that you know of owning a historic house, I also know that pain, right? So I'm not coming at you just as, you know, someone who talks the talk. I try to walk the walk as well. Now, there's lots of information available about historic preservation, but because it's a relatively new discipline, and honestly, until about, the 1980s, there didn't even exist historic preservation programs in the country. A lot of the information that's online is just not correct. And that's a big challenge, right? It's something that can be fun if you're me, right? So I can hate watch HGTV and someone can describe something as a Cape Cod and I'll be like, that's not a Cape. That kind of thing that happens a lot. But it's a lot less fun if you're trying to find good information about what you're supposed to do with your historic house, because everything's very contradictory and there's not a whole lot of really good guidance from the top. And this is a result of a lot of administrative and policy stuff that I don't want to go into today. But if you're interested in it, I'm happy to talk to your ear off about the 1966 Historic Preservation Act. But it gets very boring. So instead, what I want to talk about is how to actually do preservation within that context and how to not lose your shirt while you're doing preservation within that context. So in terms of, you know, how much money you can make via preservation, the answer is a lot. Preservation has been shown to really generate a lot of money. I just found these infographics online. You can find the same by just Googling it, honestly. The primary way in which preservation really helps is through salaries, through paying people, which is exactly what we want, right? So instead of having money go to materials that many of them are imported, instead it's paying for people's livelihoods, and especially skilled people, paying for skilled people's livelihoods, which we think is wonderful. Of course, the other great advantage to preservation is tourism, right? That places that look good attract tourists, and in preservation, what we try to remind decision makers is that we're what are so-called loss leaders. So I think you're all familiar with what a loss leader is, even if you don't know that term, which is like a historic museum, for instance. It should be free or at least very cheap, because the people who will go to that museum, they're then going to get a latte, right? They're going to stay at a hotel. They're going to spend the money locally that they would otherwise spend in a mall or, honestly, online, right? And so that's what we're trying to do, is attract people so that they can, you know, enjoy the beauty of historic places. Now, that said, let's talk about, as a homeowner, what that means. And that's really what I want to focus on today. It is, I wouldn't say easy, but it is easier to get money to help you as a preservationist, as an owner, if it's a commercial property. It is tougher to do that with a residential property, and especially your property, right? The one that you own, that you live in, owner-occupied. It's tough to get money for that. So a lot of people are going to argue that a newer building is a cheaper place to live. And this is where people like me really want to push back, because that's just simply not true. New houses today, they're definitely larger. There's no question about that. They'll have more bathrooms, no question about that. However, their materials don't last as long, right? In fact, the buildings that are built today have a lifespan, an expected lifespan of about 50 to 70 years. That's it, right? My house is from 1883, right? I can count. That's more than 50 to 70 years, right? And so what we're told in kind of general culture is that a new building doesn't require maintenance. And again, I hate to tell people, but like, no, every building requires maintenance. You cannot just, have a building and hope that it's not going to suffer with age. We all suffer with age. That's just the reality. So it's important to understand what's true and what's not true. Now, if you're interested in really delving deep into the economic statistics of historic preservation, my advice to you is to check out placeeconomics.com. Place Economics is run by preservation, economist. He is like the most famous preservation economist. His name is Donovan Rypkema, Rypkema. And he has been putting together quantitative studies about, the value of preservation at multiple levels: city level, neighborhood level, state level, et cetera. Unfortunately, as far as I know, he has not done Virginia. He has not been invited by the state of Virginia to do a study. But he has done studies in many, many other parts of the United States with his firm. I am not in any way affiliated with that firm. They're not paying me. I'm just letting you know, like, I'm objective here. I've met him once at a conference. But his data is really, really very good and really highlights, again, the value of historic preservation. Now, I'm just showing you very, very few stats. Again, I know this is kind of boring. But what you see here is kind of the most basic level of impact that we know of what happens when a building is designated in a historic area. So it's tough because we can't really do a pre-test, post-test. We can't control because it's urban planning, right? We can't just say, well, you live in this house over here and you live in that house over here, and then let's see how the values change. Like, we can't do any of that, right? So this is entirely observational research, which means, in other words, we don't know if it's correlation or causation. We don't know if it's being designated and being put in a historic district is what's causing this, or if it's just that they're associated with each other. Okay, so I just want to put that as a caveat. But that said, what does it mean financially to have your house be in a historic district? What it means is that, number one, you are much more protected from economic downturns, right? So if we're in a tough economic position, the value of a house out in sprawl is going to lower, right? Because gas is expensive, et cetera. The value of a house in a historic district, which generally is going to be more walkable, right? I look at your historic districts, you're right, they're in places that are more densely occupied. Their values are going to remain at a more stable level. And you can expect that if there's an economic upturn, that the value of the property will increase even more than properties outside of historic districts. Now, if you know anything about paying taxes, you know that's a double-edged sword too, right? If your property has a higher value, you're also going to pay higher property taxes. So I'm not saying that, this can't potentially have negative consequences. It can, but it's something that people should be aware of. And for someone like me, who's a state employee, right, I have limited budget. It is very reassuring to know that my largest, by far, investment, which is my house, is something that I can count on that is going to retain its value, because I can't say the same for my retirement savings at this point. So, preservation's expensive. I'm not going to try to pretend otherwise. but the flip side of that is that preservation also pays off, right? And so the question is, I think for most homeowners, how much do you want to invest to make sure that you get that money back? Like, where's that line? And that's a line that I struggle with as well every day, right? To figure out how much do I want to invest to make sure that I don't lose my investment in the long term. So theoretically, you can use tax breaks. I say theoretically because in the state of Virginia, for your owner-occupied property, you can't really qualify for it. The tax, when the DHR representative is here, I'm sure the DHR will have a lot more details, and things do change, so policies are, in flux. That said, generally, the point of the tax credits is really to help businesses, right? And so it's not really for homeowners. Number two, you really need to invest a lot of money for that tax benefit to kick in. Number three, you need to do it. You need to go through the process to get the tax break before you start the work, right? So in my case, when my neighbor's tree fell on my house, none of those things were possible for me. Number one, we didn't have the kind of money to do the kind of rehab that we're talking about here. Number two, we couldn't wait because we were living in the UMW dorms with my, at the time, 2-year-old and 8-year-old, and that wasn't a ton of fun. Turns out that fantasy of going back to college as an adult, no. I don't recommend it. It's not a good time. And number three, so we couldn't wait. Number three, I had a number three. I don't remember. It's been a long day. Point is, more than likely, you're not going to use the tax break. So with that in mind, again, for commercial properties, that's a completely different thing. But for your own owner-occupied property, no. So let's go over some of the ways in which you can improve the value of your house, right? That's what I want to talk about for the rest of this, just how to work with the value of your house. And the first thing that I'm going to mention is that it's all in the details, and the world is going to try to get you to do the wrong thing constantly, right? So I was talking with Randy, about the realities of being a preservationist, and I was mentioning you got to get your tetanus shot all the time because that's going to happen. You got to be aware that every piece of paint might have lead in it, that there's going to be asbestos everywhere. Like, you just have to deal with that and be aware of it. And what a lot of construction companies, the big ones, are going to want you to do is the very expensive stuff. It's kind of like when you go, get your car inspected, and then the dealer wants you to get all new everything. Oh, well, it's looking bad. You should replace it. And then it's $900, and you're like, but why? Yeah. So there's a lot of that. Here you see someone who did the right thing on their house. So on my left is the house when they got it. And you can see that the windows are all wrong. They look super weird. They're too small. They're not the right proportions at all. It's just because they were replacement windows. And they bought basically custom windows in order to put them into that space to make it look good again. And okay, it's the golden hour, so that helps. But yeah, I mean, it makes the house look a lot better. The thing with windows is that people are super touchy about them because they cost a fortune. When that tree fell on my house, we took the opportunity to give each of our daughters their own room. So we divided up a room in two, which means we needed a new window. That window cost so much money. It hurt my feelings a little. It hurt my feelings. But I don't regret it now, even though at the time I kind of cried a little bit at the price of it. Because good windows, you might not have the words for what a good window is compared to a bad window, but I think you can tell the difference. I really do. Now, the light here is not great, but if you look at that one on the left, those dividers in between the windows, those are called muntins. So this is a true 9/9 sash window. And you can really tell that each one of those is a separate pane of glass. If you look at the one on the other side, what you see there is those fake muntins. And you can tell because the reflection doesn't work against the window. Like you can see that it's just one big pane of glass with plastic inserts inside. And even if you don't have the words for it, like your brain can tell the difference. Like it can tell like one thing looks real and one thing just doesn't. So number one is you can tell. Anyone who tells you differently, no, they're lying. More importantly though, those new windows that all those companies are trying to sell to you, and I get a thing in the mail every single day of the week. I'm exaggerating. At least once a week. And now I'm not exaggerating. At least once a week I get those. I want to remind you that I serve on the Architectural Review Board of my city, and it is totally not allowed, 100% not allowed for those replacement windows. But it doesn't stop them from trying, even though it is literally against the rules. More than being against the rules and being ugly, though, the issue is much more practical, right? Let me put it this way. My windows are as old as my house. They're single pane glass, right? So yes, you could say insulation's not fantastic. That's true. However, new windows is not the answer. So let me explain in what ways new windows are bad, okay? The number one thing is any new windows that I'd be able to buy would be vinyl. We all have vinyl things. We all have vinyl things that live outside. How long did those vinyl things that live outside last? What's that? Couple of years. Let's be super generous and say 20, okay? So in 20 years, that means I need to replace literally all of my windows again, all right? My windows are made of wood. That wood was harvested in the 1800s, back when the rings in the wood, right, the wood growth was slower, which also means the wood is stronger, it is less prone to rotting, and if something breaks, which it does, then you replace it with another piece of wood, right? Which is what I just did. Well, not me, the painters who very kindly painted my house. They, took out the rotten trim and put in new, not rotted trim. Now, mind you, it was not cheap. It was still a heck of a lot cheaper than replacing all my windows. And more importantly, those windows are going to theoretically last another, I don't know, 100 years if I take good care of them, as long as I keep them painted. Now, again, we can come back to that issue of insulation, which is a real issue. Absolutely. Those new windows are better insulated because they're double or triple pane. But do you know what's even better to insulate your house? Curtains. And then you can change the color when you want. You can wash them. You can take them down. If you really, really want to, you can put storm windows. They have storm windows now. They fit on the inside, so they're not even visible from the outside. They can be fitted and removed without installation, right, without tools. You can just literally kind of shove them in. Now, mind you, those will also not last forever, but you're no longer on that treadmill, right, of like every 20, 30 years you have to replace all your windows because all that vinyl's going to fail. So yeah, replacing windows, don't do it. Like if people tell you, no, it'll save you money, it will absolutely not save you money. Once you go down that road, there's no going back too. So please save your windows. And if you don't know how, this is where there's all sorts of resources online to help you. I believe you have a college here in town. We have one up in Fredericksburg too. You can easily pay youngsters to scrape windows and learn how to do that. It's a great skill, and it's not that hard. And again, we have a window workshop, I believe every year, offered by my colleague Michael Spencer. So it's free. Come check it out. Right, same thing with siding, right? So here you can see a lovely shingle siding that was covered with vinyl. Again, vinyl has a limited time span. And once you put it on, it's kind of a hassle to take it off. Now, at least here, this is a shingle house. It's not that bad. I've seen vinyl put on bricks, and that's very bad because once you drill through the brick, there's no going back. So please don't do that. It's really not good for the building either, because it's going to cause all sorts of moisture issues. The way to deal with the facade of your building, unless it's a brick building and it's unpainted. So if it's a brick building and it's unpainted, don't paint it, all right? Because once you paint it, you can never take it off, right? But on a timber building, paint is the sacrificial layer, right? You paint it regularly, and then you can make sure that it doesn't rot. And more importantly, if pieces do rot, you take out a single shingle, you take out a clapboard or two, you replace it with new ones. You don't have to redo the entire facade of your house, right? So it's all about maintenance and piecemeal work instead of doing it all in one go. This is true, of course, for all wood trim. So here you see a lovely Queen Anne trim, and this is how people get more money for their house. I mean, fundamentally, right? If your house is just a box and it has no personality, it's just not going to go for as much money, right? If you have a house and you can say, look at this adorable Queen Anne, look at those fish scale shingles, look at that barge board. You don't have to call it barge board, it's an ugly word. Gingerbreading, right? Look at that lovely little window, right? This is how you're able to sell a house. And again, buying this trim today is very expensive. But that trim up there, as long as you take good care of it, and that just means literally just painting it. That's it. That's all you ever have to do. Then it's going to be okay. And if you really, really have to, you can use epoxy filler to if there's rotted pieces, it's not that hard. It's very smelly, but it's not that hard. Again, those are the pieces of a building that give a building character, right? So if you see the craftsman on one side, imagine it without its craftsman windows, imagine it without those battered posts, without that nice paint job, and already it just would not look as good, right? And it kind of doesn't matter what style you're into, if it's craftsman or if it's colonial revival, like that other house, right, with that broken OG pediment, and that Palladian window in the dormer. I mean, it's not really to my taste, but that doesn't matter, right? What matters is that trim is what gives that house a personality. And so taking care of that and maintaining it over time, that's how you save a house like that. And that's how you preserve its value. Right. Roofs is another one that we're lied to a lot. I found this image online. I took out the offending company that wrote this because it's not that they're lying, is that they're not telling the whole truth. And at least this one was relatively not wrong, as opposed to others, which are just just a full lie. So yes, asphalt shingles last about 15 to 20 years. And you can layer two, right? So if you replace your asphalt shingle roof, you can actually put another layer on top first, and then afterwards, that second time, you have to take everything off and start again. There are better quality shingles, that's also true. But slate roofs, tile roofs, metal roofs, those roofs, theoretically, it's not 50 years, it's not 40 years, it's not 75 years. It's theoretically forever, right? It's theoretically forever. Again, it's all about maintenance. Because in the case, especially of slate, yes, slate delaminates over time. That is absolutely true. Also, the nails that are used to hang the slate, those need to be made of copper. They cost a little bit of money. More importantly, because of the freeze-thaw cycles, the wood is going to kind of pop them out over time, kind of like a turkey popper, right? Like they're just going to kind of pop out. So yes, you have to inspect the roof semi-regularly. Once in a while, you have to go back in and tap all those nails back in. That's also true. Once in a while, especially if you have a hailstorm like we just had, you may need to replace 1 shingle, 5 shingles. That's also true. But that's not the whole roof. That's a few shingles at a time, right? It's the skilled worker you're really paying for there, right? Now, mind you, those skilled workers are getting rarer and rarer, which is a crying shame. But that roof itself, it can last forever, right? Same with a metal roof. If a metal roof is painted regularly, it can last forever. Now, if you're really made of money, you can make your roof out of copper, and then the verdigris will take care of it, right? And then you don't have to paint it at all. But I mean, if you're that rich, good for you. Please invite me over. But for everybody else, wow, nice, yeah. I mean, some of them are just exist, right? Some of them just exist. And zinc is also a good material for that. It's also very durable. But even just a regular iron roof or corrugated roof can last a very, very long time, if not indefinitely. Again, what you have to do is prevent rust. So that means painting it, having that sacrificial layer. But so those roofing companies, that's not what they want you to do. They want you to replace your whole roof, right? And sure, you know, if you build out of asphalt, then that's what you got to do. Every 20 years, you're going to have to do that because those roofs are going to give out. But a slate roof, or even better, again, a tile roof. I mean, right? If you look at this, right, clay tile roofs, 50 to 100 years. Do they really think that in all of Europe, all of those roofs are replaced every 50 to 100 years? Does that pass your smell test? No, right? Again, it's a question of replacing the few tiles that are broken, maybe adding more mortar if you have to do that. But that's it, right? So it's all about maintenance. All right. I want to finish by talking about the public good, and I know this is going to sound super preachy, so please excuse me. But the public good matters. I believe in serving the public. I believe in the importance of helping the community, being engaged in the community. And from beyond, trying to be altruistic, the reality is that helping the community, being involved in the community, helps me too, right? It allows me to be selfish as well, right? Because it improves my property values. It improves the city that I live in. In Fredericksburg, here you see downtown Fredericksburg, we have a trolley that a lot of tourists enjoy. The trolley goes right in front of my house. Now, inevitably, it will go right in front of my house as I am dripping with sweat after gardening, and I will look very bad. But I will always turn around and wave at the tourists and welcome them to Fredericksburg, because fundamentally, it's their presence that allows my town to be as good as it is, right? And most importantly, it doesn't take anything away from me. This is not a finite resource, right? It's not like them enjoying Fredericksburg takes away from my enjoyment of Fredericksburg. Very much the contrary, right? Having those people enjoy the place that I live in means that that place has more resources for everybody, more restaurants, more activities, more stores, more everything. So it really is a good for everyone. And so, right, both from a selfish perspective and from a more community-wide perspective, preservation really can help a lot. But a lot of it is the stuff that people don't really like to think about, right? So the stuff that they really don't want to think about is it's all about maintenance. It's all about the non-sexy stuff, right? It's making sure that you rake your leaves away from your downspouts so that you don't get water damage. It's all about making sure that the paint on your building is in good shape so that the wood doesn't get damaged below it. It's all about making sure that your windows are operating well, and if they're not, to, get curtains. It's all about, doing that work. And personally, I put it on a calendar because I'm a nerd, and also this is what I teach. So, I kind of, again, have to do that, right? So I have a long list of all the things we've done in our house over the years that we've owned it. And sometimes I look at that list and I'm like, wow, we did a lot. And we're allowing that house to live much longer that way. I like to think of it in terms of, instead of being, king or queen of your own castle, which I know is the way that American real estate law really kind of operates, right? That you get to control your own land. But I like to think of it more as being a custodian of that place that we're in. The house that I live in is much, much older than me, and it will still be standing when I'm dead. And it's important to me that house be in as good a condition as possible for me, for my husband, for my children, for the community. And if that also means that we then have college to send those kids, send money to send those kids to college, so much the better, because it really is a good investment. So I encourage you to please ask me questions about how to do this. I hope I can answer those questions. And thank you for coming out on a rainy Cinco de Mayo. I appreciate it.
At Mary Washington, how many students do you have as historic preservation majors?
We have about 110 majors. We graduate about 30 to 40 students a year, depending. Not a lot of them become urban planners because, as I tell them, that's signing up to being yelled at for the rest of your life. But I like it, but it's not for everybody. I understand that. But we have alums who work, all over the country, all over the world, too. Every museum, every organization you can possibly think of. I'm really proud of them. They're great.
One of the things that's a real challenge for us who own these houses is finding craftsmen to fix the stuff. I'd love it if the DHR would keep a list of them. And I know
they
they're
can't.
great to do it.
So
they don't want to,
So by law, they can't, because if they did, then that would be giving preference to one group over another, and so that you got to be objective if you're the state. But I do have some advice for that. The first is there is a branch of the National Park Service which does technical research on preservation. They're called NCPTT, the National Council for Preservation Training and Technology, I think. But they're a branch of the National Park Service, and they have a lot of information. Generally, though, the best bet is going to be to talk to any contractor who focuses on historic houses. Fredericksburg has a few. They're all alums of my program, so it's very helpful. Asking those craftspeople, and then they will then know, I'm looking for a preservation mason. I'm looking for someone who works with historic windows. Preservation is not a big field, and so if you can basically contact one person, they can then be your gateway to all these other people. Honestly, I think that's the hardest step. Is knowing where to look, knowing who to ask. It's very hard. I completely agree with you. We encourage students to go into the trades. We have a few who do so, and it's a tough job. It's a very rewarding job, and yeah, it's that's definitely the hardest part is finding those people who have the skills.
And when we redid our house, that's exactly what I did. And I ended up with some real good craftsmen. We've also, on other things around the house, we've gotten some bad advice. And you just learn after a while. You have to become educated.
Yeah, if you have that luxury, and here in Ashland, I would argue that you do have that luxury, contact preservationists, contact, Mary Wash, not our president or whatever, but our department directly, and say, hey, we're looking to, find this information. By and large, during the semester, that's hard to do because our students very often don't have cars, and it's kind of a trek. But we can then point you to recent graduates, other people who have those skills, or people who have then moved to Richmond or whatever. But definitely, use the Education Network. A really good resource for that is the National Council for Preservation Education. It lists every single university in the U.S. that has a preservation program. And so that's a great way to find out, too, information. So, for instance, I think it's Savannah State. They have a program on the preservation trades. I think it's an associate degree. But so they have lists of skilled craftspeople. So that's definitely a place to look. I think it's at Savannah. It's one of the schools in Savannah. It's not SCAD, I know that.
This will give away the fact that we haven't really paid attention to what's appropriate and what's not. But we live in the historical district, but have never really paid much attention to how you can paint your house or what you can do to it. We've just gone ahead. We haven't done that much, unfortunately. But I'm just wondering, going forward, if we need to pay closer attention, and do we need to undo anything?
So, this is where, number one, just by being in a house and using it and living in it, you're doing the right thing. I'm not a purist. I'm really not. I think, houses are meant to be used, and that's going to mean sometimes, and my girls' upstairs bedrooms, they have carpet because they're kids, and they're going to destroy it anyway, right? So I think it's a process, and it takes a long time. So I think it's helpful to have like a wish list and to go through it as you go, so that you don't end up losing steam. And also, you don't want to end up in a situation where you can't live in your house because, everything's being redone and there's dust everywhere. And, that's fun when you're in your 20s, and then it's really not fun. I can see some people here have, yeah, I can see it. So it's, again, there's phases of life where that may be okay. But I think, later on, it's just not a reality. And so you have to schedule, any kind of construction or maintenance or anything around your schedule. And so, again, putting it in a larger framework to figure out, okay, we don't need to do this right now, but in the next 5 years, we need to do this. In the next 10 years, we need to do this. And that way, it's not a surprise. It feels a lot less overwhelming financially. And, with that understanding that, having your mortgage, of course, that's a lot, but you're still saving so much compared to rental, especially these days. Oh my gosh. That to have a little bit of more money to put aside for those things when they happen is very helpful, because things happen. But I want to emphasize, they happen in historic houses and they happen in brand new houses just as much. The advantage of a historic house is that you can schedule those things, right? Because things will fail, but they'll fail not all at the same time, right? You buy a brand new house and everything in 20 years is going to fail all at the same time, and that's really, really not going to be fun, right? With a historic house, it's like, oh, the water heater broke, okay. Well, and then 2 years later, oh, well, the roof needs replacing, okay, right? But that's, I think, a lot less overwhelming than everything at once. It's just, again, maintenance. It's the stuff that no one wants to do.
Anybody else have questions?
I wanted to agree with you, Elizabeth, but I think we as a community, when back in 1983, when we were designated, lots of people never knew they lived in the historic district. A lot of people today don't know they live in the historic district. We never were able to figure out how to let people know.
All right, this is where I can help.
Yeah.
Do not underestimate the power of plaques. Plaques. People love those plaques, y'all. I have one on my house. I don't care that much, but it's, people get very excited about them. Once you have plaques, then you have people who are proud about having those plaques, and then you can have things like garden tours, right? If you don't want people in your house, which I don't blame you. If you do want people in your house, then you can have house tours. We have both of those things in Fredericksburg. Those are things that are not super difficult to set up. They're kind of low level of entry. And is that sounding bad? You don't want people in your house? Oh, is it that hard, Garden Week? Oh, plaques. In Fredericksburg, we closed down some of the streets for some of those. And there's also a holiday one, I think. I know other cities do holiday ones, and people really decorate. And you can piggyback on all sorts of other, different things, whatever activities you have. I mean, here you have the railroad. I mean, it's right there. So taking advantage of that is wonderful. Again, anything can be seen as a negative or a positive. I live right next to the train station in Fredericksburg, and when I bought my house, the person who sold it to me just overtly lied and was like, "Oh, the train doesn't come at night, and you'll be fine." And not true. Also, my house is a real balloon frame. It's it's from the 1880s, and so when the train goes by, my whole house does this, which is great if there's an earthquake. When there's an earthquake. Luckily, I love the train. I find it super relaxing. It doesn't bother me at all. And when I, go travel and take Amtrak, I can literally walk out of my house. I live a block and a half from the train station, get on the train, and go wherever I want. So, right, you can be negative about things if that's, about anything, right? So I think the secret is to be positive about it. But again, plaques are really helpful. Brochures are really helpful. And this is where I would strongly encourage you to lean on your college kids in town, right? Use your college kids in town to make those brochures as a class project. And then you can change it. My students did that for the city of Fredericksburg for the historic district. And I'm very, very proud of their work. And more importantly, the city of Fredericksburg uses it, and it cost them $0. Right? So there's ways to do that without spending money. And making people understand that they live in a really great place that's really gorgeous. In your case, the center of the universe. So, use that. Absolutely.
One thing that I've seen in other localities is because we're so spread out. It's real hard to have, you're entering the historic district now and you're leaving the historic district. That just doesn't work. But having a cap on the top of street signs that say Ashland's Historic District would be really nice in Ashland, and it wouldn't be very expensive.
I would definitely recommend that you apply for grants for this. The one that I think is the most accessible would be Transportation Alternatives, which are a federal program that's administered by the state. So it's not. I know whether it's still there or not. That I can't tell you. But it was established in '91, and for now it's still there. So we'll see. But it's a lot of money, and you can spend it on both historic preservation and on bike ped facilities. So you can do things like have bike racks that have the Ashland logo, maybe things like that give your downtown an identity. But I want to remind you, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? You have a lot of other historic towns and cities around here. So I would recommend come up to Fredericksburg, take a look, go to Stanton, take a look, go down to Williamsburg, take a look, see what they're doing, and then use what they did. It's not plagiarism. It's okay, right? Use what they did. And, if you do that, then it can be a lot cheaper. And again, getting the buy-in from the community, from the college. I would recommend also scouting, right? Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. They're fantastic resources. Local places of worship can be fantastic resources for all of this, right? Because again, this is a public good.
So my question is, are you finding that we're sort of a dying breed, the people that have interest in, fixing these houses up? I find that the young people it's very challenging to find any of them that are willing to do work. And then also, just in discussion with them, the gap is getting pretty wide for people to even think about being a first-time home buyer. And then to think, with all the maintenance and, outstanding projects, it just seems overwhelming for some young people. So I'm just wondering what your perspective coming from the college is.
Great questions. In terms of the threshold for becoming a home buyer, that one scares me very much. Realistically, my husband and I would not be able to live anywhere within 5 miles of the historic district if we were buying today, which is not good. I mean, that's really, really problematic. Housing values have shot through the roof. Mortgage rates, oh my goodness. I mean, forget it. There's no way people can afford it. And that's problematic because, you're just not going to care about a rental the way that you're going to care about a house you own. That's just never going to happen, realistically. So, yes, I share your concern with that. I have no answers, none that are polite. In terms of young people, I don't know. I see a bifurcation, right? I think there are a lot of people who just think, yeah, a house should be maintenance-free, and I don't care, and, I'm just on the internet. I just want a Wi-Fi connection or whatever. And those people absolutely exist, and they're going to keep existing. But there is a large and very active community of young people who really, really care, in part because their whole life is online, and this is their one chance to do something in real life, right? And I think this has translated also into things like crafts in general. I think a lot more people these days are like, hey, I want to learn pottery. Hey, I want to, do fiber arts or, whatever, because they're just online all the time and they're kind of screened out. I'm not on social media except for Reddit, which I know, just don't judge me too harshly. But anyway, there's a subreddit that's very, very active called Century Homes. And as far as I can tell, the vast majority of people, I mean, it is Reddit, are young. They're young people who are like, hey, how do I, deal with this? Is this asbestos? How do I fix this window? Where do I find people to help me with this or with that? And the internet really is a fantastic resource for that, right? To find those answers. And so that people can do DIY stuff that I think even a few years ago they wouldn't have tried. Right, so there's our running jokes, for instance, about doing the floor lottery, right? Ripping up the carpet, see what's underneath. If you're lucky, it's hardwood. If you're not lucky, it's subfloor, right? So things like that. I think there's definitely that enthusiasm and that community that's kind of separated from geography because it's all online, right? And so I'm more optimistic on that front. I would even say very optimistic. It's just the prices that I don't know.
I just wanted to tell you that there's a house, I think it's 207 Howard Street. Yeah, at Howard and James. That young couple moved in there, had a newborn baby, and started doing things like redoing their windows by taking the frame out, fixing the weights, and all by themselves. He's an electrician. He's not a craftsman. Taking windows out. Aha. So Betsy says but he had some prior experience, Betsy says. But still, I mean, he just was very interested, and he was probably maybe he was 30. I don't know. They were young.
I mean, again, there's a lot of free workshops. I know we offer a ton at my school, right? So we offered one this year on framing. right? In carpentry, we've had some on masonry. We have a ton on cemetery preservation, right? Which I realize is not relevant here, but those are the kinds of skills that if you don't know what you're doing, you could do a lot of damage and also hurt yourself really badly. But it's not that hard to learn, surprisingly, right? And same with window sash. Learning how to fix window sashes is not that hard. The challenging part is taking them down in the first place, I think, is the hardest part. And then patience. It's mostly about patience, right? About using the putty properly, learning, when to do something and when not to do something, right? And again, this is where doing those workshops or YouTube videos even are very, very helpful. It's just don't trust like big, multinationals and stuff. That's when you can end up doing the wrong thing. And for the love of God, never, ever, ever sandblast anything unless you know exactly what you're doing. Never, 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 never. Because that's how you end up with lead poisoning. That's how you end up with all sorts of, just don't.
Is soft washing okay if you supervise a person?
On what?
On wood.
Oh yeah.
Painted wood.
Yeah. Just don't use a pressure washer. Generally, pressure washers are really to be avoided, except if you know exactly what you're doing, because you can really damage the materials if you're not careful. But soft washing is totally fine. And if in doubt, this is where, again, finding one person or a resource online that you can trust. I'm happy. I hope I have a card. But if not, my email was there. It's alsmith@umw.edu, and I'm happy to point you in the right direction.
And then I wish, I mentioned this last week too, I wish there were a person or a group of people who had the patience to redo shutters that are not broken, but they've just, the outside pieces have...
Generally, your painter should be able to do that. That's what my painter just did, because 3 of the slats on my shutters were had been broken for a long time. And our painter did that. But our painter was an experienced painter working with historic buildings.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, kind of a strange question. Do you have any thoughts on fireplaces? Should you restore? Should you...
Whatever works for you. I have a fireplace in my house. It has a very shallow hearth. And when my second child was born, I was very worried. And so I put up a MDF board and painted it so that it looks like there's a fire in there. And I have not touched it since. My dream is to put a pellet stove in there, which would really reduce our heating costs. But it's one of those things on the list of, one day. Our younger child is still 9, and I'm like, I trust her, but she likes to dance, and she doesn't always know where her body is, so we're just going to wait. It's case by case, and it depends on what you want to do. Just make sure before you do anything with a chimney is, get it inspected, make sure you get all that soot removed. Chimney fires are very dangerous, right? And so you need to make sure that, you take care of that. But a good chimney sweep can tell you exactly what you need to do.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice, sold. No. Well, thank you so much, Andi, for coming and speaking for us. And I will say, too, that if anybody wants any resources, contact information from tonight's meeting, if you want Andi's email, or if you want somebody else's email or contact information from a previous session, I'm happy to share that. My card is over there on the table. Feel free to take it and shoot me an email, and I will forward you any information. Or if you get home and you're like, hey, I forgot my flyer, or I had an extra question that I didn't think of, again, just shoot them my way, and I'll be happy to forward them to you, forward you to whomever can answer that question for you.